Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Alexander Capiello Show on this beautiful Tuesday, March 15th, 2022. What a beautiful day out here outside it is today. Not a cloud in the sky where I'm at, down in beautiful Springfield, Delaware County. For all you people who live in the city and have to drive around all the time with these terrible, terrible gas prices, you could thank Joe Biden for that. It's crazy what's going on in this country right now. Everything's going up. Food, gas is just ridiculous. Our relationships with other countries. It's a complete and utter disaster. And we knew this was going to happen. At least I did. I don't know about my liberal friends and family, if they knew this was going to happen. But I knew this was going to happen. Now, maybe they don't mind paying the extra for the food and the gas, but, I do. I don't want to pay $4.50 a gallon for gas, So I'm trying not to drive as much, and, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. You got to eat, you got to go places, you got to do things, you got to live a little bit. It's amazing how, like, the war in Ukraine is now shifted, you know, everything shifted towards that, and, there isn't really anything being talked about the coronavirus. I mean, it is what it is. It's a new flavor of the month, I guess. And the new flavor of the month is the war in Ukraine. I will say this. I don't really want to get into politics, but, if you had a strong leader in office, like we had in Donald Trump, then this probably would have never happened. Under four presidents, the last four presidents, which are Biden, Trump, Obama, and Bush, Putin has invaded and taken over another country with the exception of Donald Trump. Think about that for a second. Trump hit him where it hurt economically. We built pipelines, in this country, and we drilled our own oil. And with that, we didn't rely on the Russians or anyone over there in that matter. The Saudis, Venezuela. We didn't rely on any of them for oil. We just drilled our own. We created jobs for a lot of people in this country, and gas prices were $2.20 a gallon. Now, it took some time when he came into office. It just didn't happen right away, but it's just, but he got it done. And a lot of people didn't like his tone, and he wasn't presidential, and depending on which, network you listen to, you're going to be kind of veered off in one direction, and some of the other people are veered off in another direction. I try to look at things with an open mind. I don't care if the leader of my country is, doesn't speak in a proper tone, isn't nice to media, isn't nice to people. I don't care about that. I care about, what he's going to do for infrastructure in the country, for food costs, for jobs, different things like that. It's a shame. But it is what it is, and we're going to move on. We'll get through it. We always do. We're strong. We're strong people, and this is going on before in the past, especially in the days of Jimmy Carter. Who was the weakest president around until this guy came along. But like I said, we'll get through it. Things will work out. And again, this is just my opinion. This is how I feel. This is what I see. The majority of the people, that I talk to, will tell me that I'm right. And it's not about being right, really. It's just about, what's good for the country now. Again, like a lot of these higher ups in government, they'll tell you for the good of democracy, you'll take more out of your pocket, for that, extra gallon of gas, and whatnot. You'll pay more for that. You'll pay more for the food, for the good, for the better good. Well, you know, how about we do this? How about like we was just worry about our country? Let everyone else fend for themselves. We can't be the policeman of the whole world. We can't be the policeman of the whole world. And I know we're like, we're in cahoots with NATO and all those countries, and if, they're attacked and we got to stand by them, I get that. But at the end of the day, really, we should really all be about ourselves, and because this country is really suffering in the long run. It's overpopulated, number one. Number two, the infrastructure is horrendous. Bridges are falling apart as we speak. It's just, crime is going up dramatically because people, on one side want to defund the police, even though they'll lie to you and tell you that they don't. So there's, less police presence on the streets, especially in all the inner major cities, which are, again, run by Democratic mayors. So it's frustrating. People are getting carjacked daily. People are actually now drilling holes into gas tanks to steal gas. That's the new latest thing now. I'm telling you, if this continues to get worse, the next thing that'll happen is, which might not be a bad thing. People might be going up to the, people who are well off, going up in those types of areas in the suburbs, hopefully not here, and go robbing their house to steal their food. I'm not saying I have any money. I don't. I'm not a rich person, but I'm saying that people who have money, I'm talking about millionaires and more, more than that, they're going to go in there and break in and steal for food because they don't want to pay these prices. It's astronomical, but it is what it is. Let's get the show started here. Tom Brady. Is it any surprise that he's unretiring? For me, no. I was a little shocked in the beginning, 40 days ago, when he announced his retirement. And I thought, well, he'll come back, in a week and say, I'm going to go maybe with San Francisco, see if he could get out of, Tampa's deal, because Tampa's losing a lot of guys. And, because they brought their whole Super Bowl team back this past season. It just didn't pan out. And Brady was getting hit and banged around a little bit. And he still had the best season any quarterback had in the NFL. So, I fully expected him to come back, even though he did announce his retirement. But, apparently he is addicted to the game, addicted to the sport, the preparation. And, there was an interview in 2009. At the time, Brady was 32, 33 years old, and his father said that it's going to be hard to get Brady to retire, and get him out of the game because he's just so addicted to the sport. He loves it so much. He's addicted to it. He's addicted to the preparation, the training aspect, keeping his body healthy, especially now. He's, going to be playing the season. This season is 23rd at 45. His father was worried back then. It's going to take a catastrophic injury to get, carted off the field, hospitalization in order to get him to quit. That's one of those things, when you're addicted to something, when you love something so much, it's hard to, pull someone away from that. You would think that he has a beautiful family, a beautiful wife, supermodel wife. You'd want to stay home and, veer off into a different direction and do some other things. He did open up this whole TB12 thing. You'd think he'd want to concentrate on that. But again, football's pulling at him. Because now, right after the season, you're going to have that time off. You're going to have those few weeks to a month. And then as you start going with the free agent signings and so on and so forth and possible trades which don't happen often in the NFL, but you do have a few that happen each year, each season, off season. You start to go wanting to get back into your routine. And I think with him, like his father had mentioned, back in '09, that, when it's time, for him to hang it up, he won't choose to do it. It'll be chosen for him, basically, is what he said. And I hope that isn't the case. I mean, I want to see him play forever because I've learned to appreciate, greatness over time. And, in the beginning, I didn't really care for the fact that he was killing the Eagles by cheating, videotaping practices and things like that. That was more Belichick, but he was involved, I'm pretty sure. But over time, the guy just is a winner, and you want to surround yourself with positive winners. You don't want to be around losers, and you want to appreciate greatness. And I'll tell you, with Michael Jordan, this guy, and say what you want. I'm not a big LeBron James fan, but you have to give him his props. The guy is 37 years old, and what he's doing at that age this year, even though the team stinks, he's putting up astronomical numbers. So, got to give these guys, credit where credit is due. So that's, Brady will be back, and hopefully, he'll lead them to a Super Bowl championship, because I'd like to see it, because sure as hell we're not going to have a Super Bowl around here for a while with Jalen Hurts as quarterback of this team, and I'll get to that a little bit later on. Even though I still think Deshaun Watson is still a possibility through a source or two that I'm hearing. So, we'll see what happens there. Aaron Rodgers signed a new deal. His deal is to stay in Green Bay. Now, there was a lot of speculation that he was going to go to Denver, maybe Pittsburgh. But Green Bay threw the money at him, and, he decided to stay there. Now, this contract, wait till you hear this, people. Year one, $42 million for the season 2022. Year two, $59.515 million for next year, 2023. And in 2024, $49.3 for a total of $150.815 million for the 3 years over the next 3 years. For a guy who really is underachieved, if you look at it, great stats. They make the playoffs every year. They've even had home field numerous times, but they've gotten upset at home. He's underachieved. For a guy, he has one Super Bowl. He should have at least 3 or 4 if you really look at it. But he's only. It's tough to win a Super Bowl. I can't sit here and say it's easy. After what the Eagles had went through all those years, and me as a fan suffering, begging and yearning for a Super Bowl championship, and to do it with a backup, no less. Shit. Talk about the luck from someone up above looking down. It's okay. It's the Eagles' time, and it sure was. So but I'll take it. I would love to have Aaron Rodgers here. I'll take the NFC Championship game losses, and as long as we're a contender every year, because you have that chance to slide through and get in, possibly win it all. That's all it takes is that one chance. So he's back with Green Bay, discount double check, and he's got the first 2 years of this $150 million deal are 100% guaranteed. So he's going to get that money. And then if he decides to play an extra 2 years, he's going to get, a new extension. It's going to be, the contract's going to be redone, and I'm sure he'll get some more guaranteed money, probably in the 4th year, and then the 5th year will be an option. But, you can't beat that. He's 38 years old now. He doesn't, he doesn't really have bad seasons at all. He doesn't throw interceptions. You can look at that as a few different, in a few different ways. He's not maybe taking chances, down the field that he normally should. But his stats, touchdown to interception ratio is off the charts, and he's averaging like almost 5,000 yards a year passing, pretty much, or close to it. So, I mean, it's unbelievable what he's doing. It's just I just think he's a little bit overrated because he's only won one Super Bowl. Usually the greats usually get to two, like Manning, Peyton. The brother wasn't as good, but Eli got his too, mostly relying on their defense. But, you have to make a play here or there. It counts still. So, usually the greats get to two, win a couple, and maybe Aaron can break through. But again, with Brady being back and being a hog, and then you got the guys out in the West. I mean, the AFC West is stacked with quarterbacks, with Russell Wilson just being traded to Denver, for a boatload. I mean, Denver now is going to be good. And with that being said, you got the extra wild card team. Denver will probably make it as a wild card because you got the Chargers who are improved. They just picked up a player for safety from New England. And they got Herbert as their quarterback. Obviously, you got Patrick Mahomes there in KC with Big Red out there. And, so Denver, they pick up Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, he had some injuries last year. So injuries aren't an excuse. I mean, I've always said that they're an excuse for losing, but when you lose your top quarterback, he's the guy. He's the general out there. And he's a Hall of Famer. So you lose that, like I said earlier, you get the luck of the gods from up above. The Eagles won a Super Bowl with Nick Foles, but 9 times out of every 10, pretty much 10 times out of every 10, you go in with a backup quarterback, unless your team is stacked, you're not winning shit. So he comes back and he's overweight and he doesn't look the same for the first 3, 4, 5 games. People think he's washed up because he's now 33, but from what I saw, it took him a few games to get acclimated, but the last 3, 4 games of the season, he was close to being back to his old self. And you watch, he's going to go to Denver. He's going to get in shape, and they're going to make the playoffs, Denver. No doubt about it. And I'm hearing now rumors that Von Miller wants to go back there because, he's got his title now with the Rams, and I'm sure they're not going to re-sign him. So he's looking to go back there. We'll see what happens with that. But, that's the state of free agency right now in the NFL and with the quarterback situation and signings and guys coming out of retirement. And, now it's on to the Eagles. The Eagles picked up a linebacker, a hometown guy. So actually surprised he signed here. He was with his old coach, Matt Rule, Hassan Reddick. It's a huge pickup for the Eagles. He signed a 3-year, $45 million deal. That is a nice deal. But, he probably could have stayed at Carolina and made a little bit more, but he wanted to come home. So Carolina was pretty stunned that he never, even thought about going back there. So that's a good pickup. We haven't had a linebacker here since the Michael Kendrick, Nigel Bradham days. Those guys, when we won the Super Bowl. Like the Eagles organization, they just, for some reason, they just don't like linebackers. No, great. It was probably the scheme. They were in under, Schwartz. Then you bring in, the new coordinator, Gannon, and, maybe he, because last year was his first year, so I'm thinking that, he probably was in the ears, like, look, because his defense really sucked last year. It was terrible. And they had no linebackers. Their best linebacker, they cut, Alex Singleton. I mean, he's a CFL guy, So you replaced him with Reddick. You're going to get a guy who's had double-digit sacks the last 2 seasons. He's a Philly guy. He wants to be here. It should work out really, really well, hopefully. Now, on the other end, you hope that he comes here and he's got the money. He doesn't, slip up. because he's home. Sometimes being home is a good thing for some people. Sometimes being home is a bad thing for some people. So it really all depends. I think it's going to work out there. He seems like a real good kid. So they signed him. They're looking at Juju Smith-Schuster out of Pittsburgh, who I'll tell you what, he came into the league by storm the first few years, and he was young. He was only 20, 21 years old. Over the last couple seasons, he's been banged up, bad shoulder. His production's really going south. Limited to 5 games last year. And he really wasn't productive. Only had 15 catches in those 5 games for 159 yards. Some of that could be placed on the injury, obviously. Well, most of it on the injury, and then some with Ben Roethlisberger being, washed up. But with that being said, hopefully he can have a bounce back year. He's young. He's only 26 years old. So you got, 2 acquisitions that made your team younger, in key positions. You need a wide receiver because Jalen Reagor sucks. Greg Ward is what he is. You got Quez Watkins, who's fast, pretty tall and fast. But it really doesn't really matter if you don't have a quarterback. You could have Jerry Rice out there as wide receiver. You don't have a quarterback that can get him the ball. Then it really doesn't matter. But it is an upgrade if they can get Juju Smith-Schuster, because now you're going to have 2 guys who can play make on separate sides of the field, and you got your tight end in Goddard. And, so you have a little something more to work with. Unfortunately, I don't think that it's the quarterback is going to pan out. Not a big fan of Hurts, but, it looks like he's probably going to be here unless Deshaun Watson, which I'm hearing is a very good possibility still, even though there's a lot of reports out there saying that, he's either going to go to Miami. Pittsburgh was thrown out there as well, but then they just picked up Mitchell Trubisky. So, earlier this morning, but, I was hearing Miami is like a number 1 spot for him. So, we'll have to see. I still think, the Eagles got a shot. I think I would definitely, for a 26-year-old quarterback, I would sign him. Or try to trade for him and give up 3 picks. Definitely, I'd give up all 3 first-round picks in a heartbeat, and try to bring him in here. And if you can keep one of the later ones, like 19, I'd keep one of them if I could. But I give up all 3, and maybe a second rounder as well to get them. They're hard to find, franchise quarterbacks, and he with the exception of the last year in Houston where he was 4-12. Last year he played. He's been solid, 10-6, 11-5. Now that last year, again, with the injuries are no excuse, but he had nobody to throw the ball to. Every one of his key guys on offense were completely out. Were injured. He had 3rd, 4th guys, practice squad guys playing. And they're defensively, J.J. Watt, who's always injured, he was out. Merciless, another linebacker, their best player, he was out. James Joseph, a corner, was out for the year. I mean, they had so many guys out, all starters on both sides of the ball. So, I mean, you could have, probably with the exception of a couple different quarterbacks, most of the time you're just going to completely fail. They went 4-12, so he's not to blame. So I still think that's in play. But as far as the Eagles, here's the question. Hurts, he's the key. Because you're going to have more talent on, the offensive side of the ball. Okay? You're going to have more talent on the defensive side of the ball. So it's going to be hard, to stop teams because it is a scoring league. So if your defense even is upgraded by 25 to 35%, and say you go from leaving up 27 points a game to 24 points a game, then that means your offense has to score 25 or more a game. And is this offense capable of doing that with Jalen Hurts as their quarterback? Again, we've said this numerous times in the past on other shows. Is he the guy? Well, unless they make this deal for Watson, he's going to have one more year to prove it. And, and it looks like they're going to put the talent around him. So he better prove it. He better somehow get the arm strength in the offseason, maybe inject some juice, some Roy juice in the right throwing arm to get that ball, to wide open receivers when he's rolling out to his right, because he can't do it when he's rolling to his left, because he's not a guy who can roll to his left. Better learn how to read defenses too in the offseason, because he's a one-look option guy, and then he takes off. One read and gone. Well, teams spy. They know that. Todd Bowles said it in the playoffs. Defensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's like he can't read defenses. It's like, so you stop that first route to Smith or Goddard, and then he's going to look to take off. So, you can't have a quarterback like that. You're not going to win. So unless he improves that, reading defenses, that's number 2, then you're not going to win. No matter who you bring in. You could have Jerry Rice. And in his prime, Jerry Rice is a wide receiver, and you're not going to, unless somebody can get the ball to him, throw the ball to him. Devonta Smith had a great rookie year, and still his numbers were on the low end. He was wide open so many different times, especially, and everyone out there that watches this show and watches sports probably would agree with me. If you don't, feel free to leave me a comment. And because he was wide open in that Tampa game numerous times, and he couldn't get the ball. Couldn't get the ball to him. There was one play where he was rolling to his left, and he was wide open in the end zone. Smith, all he had to do is just zip it in there, and, he couldn't get enough arm strength as he was rolling to his left. And, safety came all the way over, and just picked it right off. I mean, it was amazing. He sat there, literally. Smith was sitting right there in the end zone, and just waiting for the ball. And, didn't get there in time. And, it's a quarterback league. It's a scoring league. It's an offensive league. All you got to do basically is get a few stops, and then if you can score, you're set. So hopefully, he can improve a lot in this offseason. Now, can they be better than 10-7? I mean, I think they overachieved enough with a pretty weak schedule last season to get to 10-7, and get into the playoffs. And you get the extra wild card, so it's a little bit easier. But you look at the division now. Carson Wentz traded to the Washington Redskins. Now, Carson Wentz, that whole situation right then and there with him, he's just a problem in the locker room. He's a problem for organizations. I wanted to get rid of him after he got hurt and after we won the Super Bowl, because I thought that he would be on the downside. When you have a catastrophic knee injury like he had, tearing the ACL, MCL, it's hard to come back and be your old self. And if you really pay attention, he hasn't been himself. Especially, like, he used to be able to move around in the pocket and run and all that kinds of stuff. He doesn't nearly do as much of that anymore. And plus, he had other nagging injuries, too. Back, he had the severe concussion in the playoff game against Seattle a couple years back. But he's still serviceable enough where, he can get you 33 touchdowns a year and 7 interceptions, So that's something that you got to respect a little bit. And it's in your division now. It's like if he lights it up this year, then you gotta say to yourself, "Damn, why did we go ahead and give up on this guy?" But that's to be determined. So I think Washington's going to be better. Dallas is always going to be what they are, make the playoffs, lose. Now you got Washington to contend with. They got a hell of a defense. Chase Young. The Giants are a complete mess. They'll probably be fighting, with the Eagles for that third spot. So I mean, I don't know. The Eagles, if you look at it on paper, they should be better than they were last year. But they probably, schedule-wise, now I got to take a look at the schedule. I've glanced at it. It's more difficult than it was last year. So, that means Hurts has to step up and improve. This is the second full season he'll be starting if they don't make any other acquisitions, basically Deshaun Watson. So we'll see. And if it doesn't pan out, then the Eagles will be looking for a new quarterback next year. And if it's Howie Roseman, and he usually gets what he wants when it comes to, quarterbacks and certain position players, he'll get them. So we'll see what happens with that. All right, on to the Sixers. Ladies and gentlemen, Sixers are not making the finals. They're not winning a championship. They're not winning it. I'm going to tell you this. Unless they drastically improve the bench next year, and even if they do, they may not win it next year either. And then where are you at? Then you're going to re-sign a guy, James Harden, who I've come to the conclusion is overrated. Way overrated. Now, it's all fun and games when you're beating up on the Little Sisters of the Poor, the New York Knicks, and then you're beating up on the teams that are better, like Minnesota and Cleveland and Chicago. But they don't. Listen, they are what they are. Flash in the pan teams, better than they were last year and the year before. But, they're not ready for prime time. It's all fun and games. You beat those teams up, especially the teams like the Knicks, the Magic, who you barely beat the other night. Then when you go on to play the teams that are, that are going to go make the playoffs and probably, win a couple rounds. You look at the Nets. Nets got everybody back. I know Kyrie's not going to play the home games because of the whole, protocols with the virus and whatnot. But that could change. But it really doesn't matter because they'll have Ben Simmons. They'll have Kevin Durant for the home games, and they got just enough. Ben Simmons will play at some point. They'll have Curry. They got guys. They'll have bench guys. They got Dragic. They'll got guys, that'll get them through to a point where, all right, they'll win some games, that Kyrie Irving, they'll win a lot of those games that Kyrie Irving don't play at home. Because Kevin Durant won't let them lose. And they have enough talent on the bench and starting where they'll be okay. I'm picking them to come out of the East, beyond, quite honest with you. But, but if you look at the Sixers, they've had talent now over the last 4 to 5 years. And they haven't been able to get past the second round. I mean, just 2-3 seasons ago, they had Jimmy Butler, they had Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, J.J. Redick, and Ben Simmons. That was your starting five. And you couldn't win. You couldn't get out of the second round with that. I mean, say what you want. It's like this team's had players. This team's should have made it to at least one final and made it to numerous, at least a couple Eastern Conference finals. Now I'm not saying that, all right, the Harden deal doesn't make him better. You had to make a deal. You had to get rid of that, scumbag Simmons, that piece of shit. You had to get rid of him because the longer he sits, the less he's going to be worth. Now, I would have went a different direction. I would have went and traded him to the Kings for another guy who's 21 years old, Halliburton, and I would have tried to steal Bagley and Yield. They would have gave us Yield. I would have tried to get Bagley here without giving up Maxey. So, you'd have to give up a couple other guys, but you got to start in backcourt of Maxey and Halliburton for the next 10 years. They're 22 and 21 years old. And you have Embiid, to fill in for the next 3 to 5. So at least, down the line, you got young guys that are going to be aging and improve. Maxey's going to be a stud. He's only in year 2. Halliburton's tearing it up now with Indiana. I mean, he's only going to be great from what I'm looking at. But you bring this guy in to win now, and I get it, but you don't have anything else after that. Maxey's still in year 2. Listen, when it came down to the nitty-gritty against the Nets, he's in year 2. Not ready for prime time yet. Tobias Harris, man, I wish we can get rid of him in that contract. He's never ready for prime time. And who else you got? You got a bench that's terrible, except for one guy, Georges Niang. You had to go out and bring up a washed-up old, backup center in DeAndre Jordan. Shake Milton, Cork Mox, those guys are just, they are what they are. They'll show you a flashier or two, will score 30, and hit a bunch of threes and play, one great game every 2 months. And then, you don't hear from them again. You can't win a title like that. And James Harden, he's not a winner in my eyes. What has he won? I mean, back in 2012, he was a sixth man off the bench when they had their big three, and they were all young. It was Westbrook, Durant, and Harden with OKC. And they had Serge Ibaka on that team as well. And they won game 1 of the 2012 NBA Finals, and then they were winning all 3 other games. All the other games they were winning late in the games, and the guy who came up small when he was open was James Harden. Shot 1 for 10 in one of the games. And I remember telling, people, my inner circle, I'm telling them, I'm like, wow, this guy really came up small. I'm like, at the time, you're like, oh, well, he's young. It's a big situation. He's 22 at the time. The whole team was relatively young. Durant and Westbrook the same age. They had already been in the league 2-3 years, prior when it was the Seattle Supersonics, which then, became OKC. So, I mean, you expected it. Okay, Miami had lost a year prior to Dallas, so you knew the league wasn't going to let Miami and their big three, lose 2 years in a row, which they tried to because LeBron James wasn't, wasn't looking to, take over down the stretch in those games. It was Dwayne Wade who, essentially took over in those games. But, going back to Harden, you watch him, just years that they made the playoffs with OKC before he went to Houston, he just came up small, wasn't looking to shoot. And then they had a couple 3-1 leads in the playoffs. They had Golden State hung out to dry, and they couldn't close the show. Then with Houston, it was him, Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, and it was a crucial game 6 at home, and they were actually down 3-2, and he was terrible. Just, and he had the deer in the headlights look. And I saw that against the Nets the other night. He shot 3 for 17 in the 129-100 loss to the Nets. 3 for 17. And you just saw it. You just saw it in his eyes that he just checked out. and then it affects him for a game or two after. He's not. He's not the same when he has a bad game, especially against the elite teams. It affects him for 2 or 3 games until he gets straightened out by the little sisters of the poor, like the Knicks, the Pistons, the Magic, but those teams like that, the guy just doesn't. He just doesn't have a winner's look to him, and it's a shame. 3 for 17 with 11.6 rebounds and 5 assists. Embiid that night was 5 for 17. So combined, your big two, combined 8 for 34. Embiid still had 27 because he went to the line 19 times. And he has that low post presence, but Embiid needs to stay in a low post. He's taking too many jump shots. 5 for 17 for a 7'2" center is ridiculous. He should be shooting 60% from the field, but he's jacking up jump shots, threes here and there, which the threes have come down. He hasn't taken as many under Doc Rivers, which is good, but he's shooting entirely too many jump shots. Again, against the Magic, they steal the game. A game they probably should have lost in my eyes. But they won it in overtime, 116-114. Embiid had 35 and 16. Harden 26, 6 and 6. But Embiid was 9 for 28. He went to the line 17 times, made 15. So that's where he got all his points. That's where they basically won the game because Harden was 5 and 19, and 13 of 15 from the line. So in 2 games for Harden and Embiid, it was just terrible, terrible shooting night from the floor. And they got to the line because those teams are bad and the NBA officiating is going to cheat for the Sixers. Against those specific teams, especially after coming off a loss to the Nets. They want the Sixers to be a higher seed. It's not hard to figure that out. But those 2 games, Harden 3 for 17, 5 for 19, that's 8 for 36. That's like 27%. It's terrible. Terrible, terrible, terrible. Tobias, empty stats Harris had 16 against the Nets, comes back against the Magic and had a decent game. Of course, you could put slop team next to that because the Magic are slop, and that's where Harris seems to dominate against the slop. Then we come back to last night where the Sixers lose at home to a good team. Second good team in a row they played at home that they've lost, the Denver Nuggets. And Tobias Harris has 10 points. So Tobias Harris is back to normal. There's a guy who's stealing money and has stolen it for years. Embiid had 34 and 9. He had a better shooting night. And Harden, 24, 9, and 11. He had a better shooting night. Even though he only took 10 shots, he made 5 of them, 50%. That's good. So, bottom line is that the Sixers, the deal made them better. Because you lose Ben Simmons' defensive, presence. Okay, and he didn't give you offense. He, gave you 8 to 10 rebounds a night, 8 or 9 assists. You had Curry. You lose a Ben Simmons defense, and you had to play with Curry. Curry, they were winning, but they weren't good enough to go further than probably the first round. You make this deal, which you did get better. But the problem with the deal is you have no bench. Your bench consists of Niang, Danny Green, Shake Milton, Cork Motts, DeAndre Jordan, and Isaiah Joe. If they want to throw him into a game. A lot of people probably don't even know who Isaiah Joe is. I certainly don't really know much about him. So maybe they just should throw him in there and give him a chance, see what happens in the playoffs. I don't know. But right now, the Sixers are currently third in the conference at 41 and 26, 3 games out of first place. You got the Heat and the Bucks 1-2. The Bulls are fourth. You want to try to somehow get to the Bulls and the Cavs. You've owned them this year. You've beaten them. You're 6-0 against the Bulls and the Cavs. That's the teams you want to try to get early if possible, and then, take your chances later on. Because at this point, right now, you'd be, if things ended up the way they were, you'd be playing the Cavs. Obviously, you should beat the Cavs. Okay, but then after that, depending on who does what, and then you got the 9 and 10, seeds with the play-in games to be the 7 and 8 seeds. You got the Hawks and the Hornets. Now the Hawks, we all know what they did with the Sixers last year, and they could get hot at any point and slide on up the standings. So, the Hawks right now are 5 games behind the Cavs for 6. So if the Sixers, go from 3 to 4 or stay at 3 and the Hawks slide up to 6, you're looking at a date with the Hawks in the first round this year. Now, you'll probably beat the Hawks this year. You should, because you got James Harden. That's what everybody will tell you, but who knows? They got Trae Young. Trae Young's a hell of a ball player. Now, on the other hand, if the Sixers drop, because they're only a half a game ahead of the Bulls, so if they drop to 4 and the Bulls move up to 3, then the Sixers have the Celtics. We're sitting, in the 5th spot right now. A full game up on, a game and a half up on the Cavs. So, it's kind of and the Celtics are a really good team. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard, to come out of the East if you're the Sixers, because you're going to have to go through the Heat, which they have problems with, the Bucks, which they kind of have problems with too with the Bucks. They beat them in Milwaukee recently within the last month, but they got smashed by them earlier in the year. They have more talent and more deep on the bench. So, I mean, realistically, could they beat the Bucks? Sure. A lot of people think the Bucks would be an easier matchup, but Bucks have more players. It's as simple as that. Bulls, you can beat them. Celtics, I think the Celtics, they got 2 legitimate stars in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I think the Celtics they beat the Sixers 2 years ago in the playoffs. Swept them. So Jason Tatum's only gotten better. Why the Sixers didn't draft him with the number 1 pick boggles my mind. That was Brian Colangelo, a piece of shit scumbag. I think he was brought in here to, fuck up the Sixers for a year or 2, which he did. But you got the Celtics at 5 with Tatum and Brown. They're 2 legitimate superstars. And you got Marcus Smart, who's just a gritty. They're a hell of a defensive team, the Boston Celtics. Don't be surprised if they make the East Finals. They're a team that is going to give a lot of these teams trouble. They just keep dogging and keep fighting you. They got that dog in them. Then you got these other 4 teams down here. You got the Raptors, Nets, Hawks, and Hornets. A lot of people are saying, well, the Nets might not even make the playoffs. They got to win the play-in games. Listen to me. They are not only going to make the playoffs, they're coming out of the East. Mark it down. Coming out of the East. So the Sixers, in order for the Sixers to win a championship or get to the finals, they're going to have to go through teams that have superstars like Durant, Irving, okay, and the Greek Freak. Okay, you got him. Then you got the Celtics. You got Tatum and Brown. Okay, now, but the 2 legitimate ones are Irving and Durant, and then you got the guy in Milwaukee. So you got to get through them to get to the finals, and I'll tell you, it's going to be hard. I don't think they get past the second round, but if they do somehow get to the finals by going through those 2 teams, and you get miraculous play from the bench, guys step up like Milton and Korkmaz, Danny Green. If they can somehow get to the finals, by going through the Nets and the Bucks and beating them, then they have a really good, solid shot of winning it all. Because then they've already come through adversity. Sometimes you got to go through adversity to get to, the top of the mountain. It's like you climb a mountain and you go through all this adversity with the weather and animals and different things like that. I know I'm probably not saying it right, but then when you finally make it to the top, if you don't die before you get to the top, you finally make it to the top. You've overcome that adversity. You've won. And I just fully believe that if they can get through, again, which is a lot to ask, and I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's a second round exit again, and then Doc Rivers is fired. But, if they can get through to the finals by beating the Nets and the Bucks in whatever order, they got a good shot of winning it all, because then they've been through the adversity. They know what it takes. And, they were able to do it. So we'll see. I still don't think they have enough, and that's how I feel. So, do we really want to talk about the Flyers? All right, well, the Flyers are sitting in 9th place in the conference, 47 points in 59 games. They still haven't traded Giroux yet. The last podcast I had, Giroux wanted to go to either St. Louis, Colorado, or Minnesota. Those are the top 3 teams in the one division out west, with Colorado out, being the best. Can't blame them for wanting to go and win a cup. But I can't believe they haven't gotten rid of him yet. The rumor around, the city is and the team is that he is, they want to keep him here so he can play 1,000 games as a Flyer. Get rid of him. You gotta get what you can. I don't care if he plays in 233 games as a Flyer or 999 games. I want to trade him and get some, replenish the system, because right now you don't really have anybody down in the system that that I've seen or heard that is ready to come up in here and make a difference. I thought one of the guys would be Morgan Frost. That just hasn't panned out with him. Now he's been injured, but he's been up and down. But really, really they haven't improved their farm system, their minor league system at all. They just haven't panned out. And a lot of the guys they drafted, Nolan Patrick, number 2, gone. Gostisbehere gone. He didn't work out. I think, Hag's gone. On Sanheim, I think he sucks. Carter Hart. I know our hockey guy, Derek Patowski, hopefully I can get him on the show at some point. Maybe he can talk about that. He was never high on Carter Hart. I'm beginning to think now, the more I watch Carter Hart, he'll have his good games, but he may not be the guy. But again, you don't have really much in front of him either, so you can't expect him to save 50, shots a night, make 50 saves a night, 40 saves like that. So, but 2 best teams really, in my opinion, I'll forget the points, are Tampa. I'm predicting them to come out of the East again, and I'm predicting them to win it. Colorado is going to come out of the West. And, actually I have Colorado winning the Cup. But it wouldn't surprise me if Tampa wins the 2nd Cup in a row. Those Tampa teams, man, they're really doing well. In these sports. The Bucks, the Rays in baseball. So I don't know what they're doing down there, but management is really doing a great job. On to the Phillies. Well, you're going to miss a little bit of the season, but not much. Players are going to play. No lockout, looks like. May miss a week or 2 of the season, but other than that, the Phillies made some signings. They signed some relievers for the back end of the bullpen. Got some guys who really can't throw strikes. You got the guy Familia they picked up, who's bounced around the league a little bit. Was with the Mets most recently. Brad Hand, Corey Knebel. He's good. He was announced by Joe Girardi the other day that he will close. Now, He had one season with Milwaukee at 39 saves. Uh, that was 4 years ago. After that, he hasn't really done much. Um, so, he was 4-0 last year with a 2.45 ERA as a reliever. Setup guy type. He didn't really play much. He's had some injuries himself. I don't know much about the guy, but I will tell you that he's only had one good season as a closer. So, in the last four. So hopefully, he's the guy. Hopefully, he can go. I think anything better than Hector Neris and Ian Kennedy is an upgrade. Ian Kennedy, and has a track record as a starter, or did have a track record as a starter. He's gonna go sign with Arizona, but he did all right for you last year. He also killed you a couple times too, but they're one and the same in my opinion. Are you getting that much of an upgrade with this Corey Knebel guy? Who knows? He had one year where he saved 39 games. You can't go by wins and losses in ERA unless the ERA is real low as a reliever. You got to look at the WHIP, the walks and hits per innings pitched. That's the key. That's around 1.1, and that's solid. Anything over that is then you got a problem. Listen, if you're a reliever, a middle reliever, in this league, like Familia in hand, that means you couldn't start and you couldn't close. So these guys are set up men, middle relievers. Even Knebel, really, he had that 1 year. That's why they put him in as a closer. Now you got Jose Alvarado, a lefty. Him and Familia have problems throwing strikes. They throw 150 miles an hour, but they can't throw strikes consistently. So they have no control. Brad Hand throws 75 to 85 miles an hour. He's a breaking ball pitcher. So apparently he has good control, but he's had a bad couple seasons. He made a little bit of a comeback last year, but late in the season because he's bounced around because he's a guy that good teams want to pick up, or teams that have a shot they think to make in the playoffs. So they're going to pick up a guy like a Brad Hand to give him some more bullpen stability. So he was bouncing around with a couple different teams, but at the end of the day, these are your legitimate setup men, and spot closers. I don't know. I'm hoping that Sir Anthony Dominguez can recover and be back to his old self from year one, and he could take over, closer's role here, or a solid setup, and hope that one of these 4 or 5 guys, can rejuvenate their career. Familia throws hard, and you're hoping that, again, one of these guys can just step to the forefront and have a good season, because I think the Phillies have enough hitting. Now you have a DH in the National League this year. I think they have enough hitting to where they'll be all right. They need a left fielder, so they should try to go out and get Chris Bryant, and then he could spot start at third. But other than that, they re-signed Odubel Herrera because they had to. They had to re-sign him. He is what he is, but you need a left fielder now. So you got to try to bring in Brian. If not, maybe Michael Conforto, Nick Castellanos, I'm hearing. And now you have a DH. I know he's old, and he's been around the block. Last year was his first signs of showing age. But I'd bring Nelson Cruz in somehow. In 2021, he only had 13 homers and 36 RBIs. He batted .224 at 41. But the year before that at 40. 2020 batted .294 with 32 homers and 86 RBIs. So it's a DH. He's only going to bat. He doesn't have to go in the field for anything. So, that's just another bat that, big bat that has the potential of hitting a home run every time he's up. Or, a chance to do, hitting a ball in a gap. an extra base hit. So that's just, somebody in the middle of the lineup to put protection around Harper and those guys. So I would try to bring somebody like him in, or even Albert Pujols. I don't know if he's what his deal is, if he's still in LA or with the Dodgers, but if he's available, and that's a mistake on my part, I should have did the research on that. But if he's available, bring him in. Let him be DH and let him. He's going to get you 25 and 75 as a DH, even at his age. Which is 42 years old, which is probably with those guys down there, they lie about their age, so he's probably 52. But hey, I don't care if you're 62. If you're giving me 25 and 75 or 80 as a DH, batting eighth or ninth, I'll take it. So that's it right there as far as the Phillies. And finally, some MMA news. There was a big fight at 170 last week between Kobe Chaos Covington and Jorge Gamebred Masvidal. We all expected that to end the way it did. It was a lot of hugging and wrestling because that's what Kobe Covington does. Former best friends and roommates for America Top Team. That ended in a 5-round decision win for Kobe Chaos Covington. Masvidal's at the point now. He had a big 2019 where he had 3 beautiful wins by knockout, but he hasn't won since. And and he's fought 3 times now. And once he got knocked out cold in the second fight against Usman. He's 37. He'll be 38. It's he looked very tired in this last fight. So, and he isn't one to watch the diet a lot. So he just signed a deal with points, pay-per-view points. So he's going to be sticking around the UFC for a while, but he better start winning. Now he's gone through this before, these 3-2 fight losing streaks. Because his professional record is 35-16, which is phenomenal. But he was younger then. He's not young anymore. Father Time's catches up with everyone. So, we'll see what happens with him in the future. I'm hearing that him and Leon Edwards are going to probably, fight. They were supposed to fight before, but Masvidal got hurt, so he had to bail out. But that's a fight that needs to happen because back in January of 2019, over in England, when Masvidal knocked out Darren Till in the second round, Edwards basically called him out while he was doing an interview, which was disrespectful. And Masvidal smashed him right in the back in the locker room. It was beautiful to see because you shouldn't interrupt someone's interview like that. It was totally disrespectful. And as a fan of Masvidal, which I am, I'm glad that he did that because Edwards is a punk. But that's the fight you'll probably see next. Kobe Covington, who's another guy who's a punk. I heard going around the MMA world that the reason why a lot of fighters that were all with America Top Team bailed, on Kobe Covington was because, he was just a liar and a thief and a cheat. And, he actually bailed on America Top Team. He left and just didn't pay his bills and things of that nature. So, he's kind of a wise ass. And, hopefully he'll get his due. I mean, Usman shut him up both times, but especially the second time. So he can't beat Usman. So, and he's looking for a third fight with Usman. But Usman said, you got to beat Gilbert Burns, Leon Edwards. Kobe Covington wants to fight Dustin Poirier at 170. Poirier's he's fought at featherweight. So, and he could move up if he wanted to. And that's another guy. They've had the war words because they both were teammates in America's Top Team at one point. So, we'll see what happens in the future with MMA. But there's a lot of new guys coming in. A lot of the older guys are starting to fade out. We'll see what Conor McGregor does this year. He's supposed to come back from that terrible injury he had against Dustin Poirier when he kicked him in the leg and it completely shattered his ankle. So we'll see. All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this version of the Alexander Cappiello show. I'm trying to get guests booked. I'm trying to do more shows. It's been a busy time. Now we got spring coming. I hope everybody gets a chance to get out there, enjoy the weather. We're gonna have a nice week or two of beautiful weather coming up. If you can get out there and stay active, it would be nice. Get some vitamin D from the sun, and try to stay off the roads if you can. There's too many people on the roads, construction going on, accidents, people texting and driving. Gas prices are ridiculous, but you got to live. Just try to live and enjoy each day because it might be your last. So I try to take one day at a time and go about my business and go from there. So again, it was great to have a show here today. And I hope to get a lot of views here. But if not, I really don't care. I just enjoy doing it when I have the time to do it. So, okay. Have a great day. Enjoy. And I'll see you soon.